Hello, you. You're listening to A History of Italy. Episode 185. Clouds over Venice, Julius II and Cambrai, 1500 to 1508.
Lasci colli nelle valli, tra due salici piangenti, io ritrovo la speranza di un amore che ormai fu.
It's been a while since we've been back to visit with Venice. We've mentioned her repeatedly, but haven't dropped in to see how she was doing. By the way, if you'd like to hear this done on a more exclusive level and possibly better, you will probably want to check out the podcast The History of Venice with Jess and Simon. But let's hear about it from them directly.
Hi, this is Jess.
And Simon.
From the brand new History of Venice podcast.
If you like Mike's A History of Italy and want to know more about the fantastic city of Venice, we've got something for you.
We're only a couple of episodes in so far, but if, like us, you're often stuck waiting for the next episode of A History of Italy, you'd be very welcome to join us over at the History of Venice podcast.
There are so many great characters whose stories we're really looking forward to telling. We'd love it if we could share them with you too. Just search for History of Venice wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening, and we hope to see you soon.
As the 1400s moved into the 1500s, the most serene Republic of Venice had some little things to be pleased about and some things to worry about. Although the Turks, a constant threat to the very existence of Venice, had expanded greatly in the eastern Mediterranean, Venice still held on to some of the trade colonies, and, as the new century rolled in, the Turks didn't seem too intent on continuing hostilities, and signalled that they were ready to have a breather. A peace treaty would be reached in May 1503 and would last for around 30 years. On the Italian peninsula, the Republic had not only penetrated inland in the Veneto and Lombardy areas, but with the fall of Cesare Borgia, they were also extending their influence into the cities of Romagna. The trick they used there was that they would cause trouble and foment rebellion, reinstate the old lords of those cities, and have a friendly ruler in place. On an international level, they had managed to strike a clever balance of neutrality and intervention between the forces of France, Spain, and the Holy Roman Empire. Thanks to the mess of the Italian wars between France and Spain, they had even managed to gain some footholds in Puglia, the heel of the Italian boot, with some important port cities. On an economic and political level, they were still one of the most powerful forces in Europe, and they knew it. The downside to all of this was that more and more people were getting annoyed and envious of Venice and accumulated reasons to want to get back at them. Then there was the whole thing about the new continent having been discovered, which shifted the interest of investments away from the Mediterranean and towards the Atlantic. Interestingly, the King of Portugal had reached out to Venice to see if they were interested in getting a piece of the action, but they declined. As well as novelties heading west, it is around this time that the Portuguese went around the Cape of Good Hope, opening up yet another channel that could threaten Venetian commercial routes. When the first shipment of pepper, transported completely by sea, showed up in the port of Lisbon, for the Venetians, it was cause for worry. Now, the last thing you want in a republic based on trade, in which merchants have created an oligarchy, is a financial crisis. Well, it's the last thing you want anywhere, really, but particularly here. But hey presto, that's what Venice got in the early 1500s, with the banks of the Garzoni, Lippomano, and Prioli all going under and causing a pretty serious cash flow crisis that munched up and spat out more than one rich merchant. Speaking of the rich merchants and the oligarchy, we know that the main families had managed to keep themselves in the driver's seat for a while now, especially ever since the Serrata del Maggior Consiglio, the closing of the main governing body of Venice to new members all the way back in 1297. For some reason, the plebs got it into their heads that when Doge Agostino Barberigo died in 1501, they would have a say in the election of the new one and wanted a guy by the name of Filippo Tron to be elected. He wasn't one of the people, of course, and was actually the nephew of the previous doge. He was quite rich, but he was loved by the people. He almost got it too. The groups that had to elect the group that had to elect the group that had to elect the group that had to elect the doge had made their choice. Then, on the night of the 26th of September 1501, Filippo Tron died quite suddenly. Many, especially among the populace, suspected foul play. The doctor sent to examine him simply determined with great medical prowess that he was really fat. He actually was, and one supposes it's plausible that the excitement could have given him a heart attack, but it's not like it was a flash condition or something. The suspicion remains. In place of Filippo Tron, the evidently fitter Leonardo Loredan was elected. This was 1501, and we mentioned above that after the fall of Cesare Borgia by 1504, Venice had managed to extend its influence over the lands of Romagna, and also further south, Russi, Forlimpopoli, Rimini, Faenza, Cervia, Urbino, Cesena, Fano, Imola, and Forlì. We saw in the last episode that Pope Julius II was not at all pleased with this situation and felt these lands should be back in the hands of the papacy. Faced with growing hostility from the Pope, Venice continued with the pragmatic, cautious approach and offered to hand back Fano. It was not enough for Julius, but we saw that he decided for the moment to concentrate on Perugia and Bologna. He did, however, reach out to Louis XII of France and Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian of Habsburg, neither of whom were too well disposed towards Venice. In September 1504, dark storm clouds started to gather over Venice when France, Spain, and the Empire reached an agreement in Blois, which included an anti-Venice component. It wasn't the only thing they spoke of, for it was here that they sorted out more or less definitively the question of the Kingdom of Naples, with the French renouncing their claim. It also sorted out the question of succession to the Spanish throne, something which would become very interesting pretty soon. Venice tried to appease the Pope further by offering all of Romagna, keeping only Faenza and Rimini. By this time, however, the Pope was on the warpath. Things were not quite fully ready. The Pope and Louis were also having some issues. In 1506, there was a rebellion in Genoa, not against the ruling French, but against the Genoese nobles. France intervened to put down the rebellion, but suspected, not without cause, that the Pope was encouraging it. This victory was a pretty good ego boost for Louis and the French after the loss of Naples. Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian was also rearing to go, and, with the excuse of going down to Rome to be crowned, started attacks in Venetian territory, but was soon seen off, licking his wounds, at the hands of the Venetian army commanded by Condottiero Niccolò Orsini, who managed not only to push back the imperial troops, but also take Gorizia and Trieste. The following peace negotiations also involved France, who ended up feeling offended by them and being annoyed with Venice. On the 8th of December 1508, the powers that be in Europe formed a We Hate Venice Club, which should have been called that, but ended up being known as the more boring League of Cambrai. It had quite a star-studded cast. Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian I, King of France Louis XII, King of Spain, Naples, and Sicily, Ferdinand II. Pope and ruler of the Papal States, Julius II. Duke of Ferrara and husband of Lucrezia Borgia, Alphonse I of Este. Duke of Savoy, Charles III. And the Marquis of Mantua, Francesco II Gonzaga, the hero of the Battle of Fornovo that had seen off Charles VIII. Each of them had a list of requests which basically added up to all the land that Venice had on the Italian peninsula. As the cloud gathered into a poo-poo storm, Venice hoped for the best and prepared for the worst. They sent more diplomats to Rome, but also started to prepare the army for a fight. Venice made some more attempts at diplomacy, but the Pope was having none of it and went with the nuclear option with an interdict on the city. Although Venice was trying to find a way out, they were not going to take things lying down. They sent ambassadors to nail up on the door of St. Peter's calls for a council to depose Julius. It was around this time that Maximilian jumped the gun and started an invasion of the Venetian lands again, and was forced back again. But just when Venice had started to see a glimmer of hope in the old divide and conquer strategy, a really bad omen manifested itself. We have spoken before about the Arsenale, the unparalleled shipbuilding area in Venice that could churn out in days and weeks what other powers required months or even years to build. You can visit it to this day. It is currently the seat of the Naval Academy. It's one of the rare corners of Venice that you can wander around without having to battle through the ever-increasing rivers of visitors. In March of 1509, a stock of gunpowder exploded, destroying a huge section of the Arsenale, including surrounding houses, killing many and wounding countless others. It was actually a could-have-been-worse situation. The day before, 4,000 barrels of gunpowder had been shipped out. Had they not, it's hard to imagine what sort of damage could have been caused to the whole city. In May of 1509, France was on the move. They reached the Adda River, the border between Venice and Milan. They had been joined on the way by the Marquesses of Saluzzo and Monferrato from Piedmont, and were soon joined also by the Duke of Ferrara. The Venetians, under the general command of Bartolomeo d'Alviano and Niccolò Orsini, had already started some counter-moves, taking some minor castles in the lands of the French as rulers of the Duchy of Milan. Although at first Venice started off well, the ensuing Battle of Agnedello, fought on the 14th of May, 1509, was a humiliation for the Serenissima. Niccolò Machiavelli wrote that in a single day the Venetians lost what they had carefully accumulated over 800 years. This is a bit of an exaggeration, of course, but it does give an indication of what a disaster Agnedello was perceived to be. The Venetian commander, Bartolomeo d'Alviano, was captured and spent the next 4 years in French custody. In the following days and weeks, almost all of Venetian land on the Italian mainland, the terraferma, was lost. One last push could have also put an end to Venice herself, doing what no other power, including the Franks of Pepin and the Genoese who had reached the lagoon, had managed to do. But Venice had not said its last word. They still had some of their holdings in the Mediterranean, and, incredibly, the Turks decided not to use their moment of weakness to deliver a fatal blow. Not only that, but the Turks even offered to help out. Just when the alliance formed at Cambrai could have finished off the Serenissima, they halted. What seemed to be an unavoidable destiny would soon change completely. Alliances would switch, and a whole new game was about to be played. Thank you very much for listening. A History of Italy is a Sentire Media podcast, created and hosted by me, Mike Corradi, and produced by my wonderful Patreon supporters, whom I would like to thank. Starting from the first half of the Margherita Hack and Galileo Galilei level, and they are Alison H., Amanda D., Annie, Benjamin W., Karsten, Catherine C., C. Lane, Cindy M., Chris H., Cospia Fanboy, David M., Dean V., Demetrio M., Dennis K., Dennis S., Dominique T., Edward J., Emily B., Eric W., Federica R., Gabriel S., Gunnar, Heather M., Ignazio, Il Valentino, Jane T., and Jeff Malloy. And of course, we cannot forget the tippy top, Maria Montessori and Dante Alighieri level, Lisa K., Peter W., David L., David C., Sen, David A., Karen D., Helenka, Bridget, Dallas, Joseph, Stephen, and Julian. This episode is also dedicated to new Patreon supporters, Miles, Hendrik, and David M. Thank you very much, and welcome aboard. If, like them, you'd like to have access to extra content and ad-free episodes, you can go to ahistoryofitaly.com, click on the support page, and become a Patreon supporter, or just support us on PayPal, as Karen does every month. Thank you very much, Karen. And as Stephen B. has done very generously, also to celebrate the victory of our Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl. Fly, Eagles, fly. If you'd like to get in touch for questions, comments, or say how much you love the Philadelphia Eagles, go ahead. Hello at ahistoryofitaly.com, or on social media. You can reach us on Twitter, Facebook, and on Instagram. Once again, thank you very much for listening, and until next time, arrivederci.